Welcome back to the Strength and Speed podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner and Mud Gear Battle Alliance Pro, Evan Preparis. I've been gone for a hot minute. I apologize. I was training, tapering, and then I got sick. Well, that's another story. Getting ready for World's Toughest Mudder, and then I was busy racing, traveling, and doing Operation Infinite Hero Challenge, Tough Mudder's team building event that I help run. So I'm back now. Going to try to be more regular over the next couple months. But let's get to today's guest. Before we get to him, though, a quick word from this episode's sponsor. So this is post-World's Toughest Mudder, so all about recovery. So I'm going to highlight a couple of brands that are sponsors of Mud Gear Battle Alliance Pro Team that are all focused on recovery. So one of them is Yoked. It's a supplement that you take that helps build muscle. So it's great for recovery. And if anyone wants to try that, you can use code STRENGTH20 and save 20%. Also, Compex, essentially recovery, like massage guns, and they have those boots that compress by air that are on the monetarily one of the lower cost ones that you can buy. And then finally, OOFOS, right? So if you're not tracking OOFOS, you need to get a pair. They are the best sandals post-race, period. They absorb 37% more impact than traditional running shoe foam. Super comfortable. I own the shoes. I own the sandals. I own the slides. If anyone has any questions about the shoes, just shoot me a text. There's two different styles. There's the easy and then there's the normal ones. I can't remember what the other ones are called, but I like the normal ones better than the easy. Essentially, they're a little bit softer on the top, so you can check those out. All right, let's get to today's guest. Joining me, I have Ean Caskey. Ian, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're gonna run through your bio real quick, and then we'll spend about 20 minutes talking about you personally, and then we will transition into some World's Toughest Mudder stuff. How about this race, and then also like how it compares to previous years. So a little bit about Ian. 5-sport athlete in high school, so football, cross country, basketball, track, and baseball. That is very busy. I didn't even know you could do 5 sports. All-state in track senior year, 10th in the 400, 2nd in the 800, 3rd in the mile. Ran cross country at Cornell College, all-conference cross country, all-American in track for 800. School record was 800 was 151, so that is fast. I ran post-collegiately for a few years. And then in 2014, ran his first Warrior Dash from friends, enjoyed himself, and then ran in 2015 a competitive heat, took 4th, then switched over, started doing some Spartan, Chicago Spartan Sprint Super Elite, and then kind of kept going from there. So 2017, first podium, then 3 more in 2018, 3rd in Spartan Tahoe Ultra, 2019, 16-14 in the 100-meter race at Tunnel Hill. 2020 did the Ultravirus 12-hour Matt Davis's Obstacle Racing Media's virtual race, got 70 miles second. And then 2021 set Masters record, so that's 40 and up for road 5K, 15:36. First place Chicago Toughest with 60 miles. That was a good race. I was there. And 6th place at World's Toughest Mudder with 100 miles. So, Ian, welcome.
Thanks.
So let's start talking about you first. So tell me about how you found OCR specifically, right? Because it looks like you've been a lifelong athlete. And was there ever a point where you were not an athlete, or has it just been kind of steady going all these years?
It's been pretty steady. Like I said, I kind of took a hiatus after college and worked for a while. I was probably only running a couple times a month, but other than that, it's been pretty consistent since probably junior high.
Gotcha. And, I noticed your high school stuff and college is all short distance, right? 400, 800 mile. Yeah. And then I look at your last couple of years and it's like 12-hour, 100-mile race, 12-hour race, 24-hour race. So why the transition?
Honestly, I'm not real sure. It just I kind of fell into it, fell into a 50K with some friends of mine and did pretty well. And enjoyed it, and it was a kind of a new way to push my limits, I guess, and see what I can do.
Gotcha. And that 100-mile, I think I may have said 100-meter in the bio. I'm not sure, but 100-mile race, 16:14 is like an insane 100-mile time. Even I'm guessing that's a fairly flat course.
It was, it's on an old railroad track in Illinois.
Okay, but still, 16:14 is literally, that's insane. Oh, man.
And I actually took ninth place that year. Like on
Jeez.
back
Jeez.
courses.
So I'm assuming it was just flat and straight for a long time, right?
Yeah. Yep. It was a 25 out and then 25 the other direction, and then you repeated it twice. So it was
Ah.
it was pretty monotonous, but it was good for times, I
Yeah, I helped pace
guess.
my friend during a 100-miler that was on, I think it was a Rails to Trails 100. I think it was 50 out, 50 back. And like coming back, I was pacing him those last about 20 miles. The trees created like this tunnel, and it was like they made you drone really bad because
Yeah.
there's like your
Yeah.
scenery is essentially not changing. It was weird.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how this was.
Ugh.
And then especially at night, it's just headlamps bouncing and a lot of monotony.
So tell me about like your training when you were doing short distance stuff, right? So like, 5K and below, and compare that to your training now that you're a little more ultra focused.
So 5K, I would be doing more short mileage probably on a week. Uh, Before I got really into OCR, I may have done 20 to 25 miles, mostly track work. Uh, and then as far as intensity, I was probably hitting like 50% hard, 50% easy, which I've found in the last few years. Um, I don't know if you've heard of Matt Fitzgerald. He's got a book on 80-20 running.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love Matt Fitzgerald.
yeah, that's been a game changer. Probably the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years. Um, just understanding the slow mileage and how much that fills the aerobic base. That's been huge. Once I kind of switched into the longer endurance events, um, I don't think it would have been possible, obviously, with 20, 30 miles a week, but with, I probably hit 60 to 80 miles most most often, I guess. And if I was trying to still hit that 50-50, I would be injured and fatigued and, you know, you can't build very long on that. So that was probably the biggest game changer for me.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm gonna plug his other book, which I've plugged probably a dozen times on this podcast before. Have you read How Bad Do You Want It?
Yeah, great book.
Love it. Yeah,
Yep.
it's one of my favorite. I've actually listened to it often before like big races, just to kind of like bring my mind back into the right
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
Cool. So obviously a lot of road and cross country in the early part of your uh, athletic career there.
Yep.
Why the switch to obstacle course racing?
Um, Again, I kind of fell into it. I I had done those few warrior dashes just for fun, and I still kind of had the running bug. So the second warrior dash I did competitively, um, I could tell that I maybe had a little potential there. And then actually the Spartan race, I had signed up for a hard charge when they still had an Iowa race,
Nice.
and
That's
that was the
really
year they went
old.
under. Yeah, I think it was 2015. They went under that year, and Spartan did their thing where they get the email list and send out a thing saying you can have a free race if you know, sorry that you had this hard charge hold on you, but you can do free Spartan if you want. So I ended up signing up for the Chicago one and assumed it was just like a warrior dash. I didn't really do any research or anything.
Mm.
And then got to the race. I had never even done a burpee. I didn't even know what a burpee was. And I think I ended up doing 120, 150 something, just an unreal amount, and was destroyed. um, but it was a good experience in terms of I'd never I'd never been so tired. I think I finished in like 50 minutes, but I was completely drained, and I don't think I'd ever been that drained from any cross country track, road race, anything like that. And um, it just kind of sparked me to see see what I could do. I guess
Gotcha.
is a new thing that I had no idea existed. Honestly,
So I'm gonna jump back for a second. So when you did the Warrior Dash in 2015, do you remember
hmm
what venue it was?
it was the Des Moines one.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say if it was the Chicago one, I was there, but
No,
I was not at the Des Moines one.
no, it was just the little Des Moines one. And actually, Bracken won that race, which I didn't. I He started coaching me, I think, in 2015 or 2016, and I figured that out around that time too, which is kind of crazy.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, it's funny. So I've looked at pictures from like 2015, and at the time I didn't know anyone on the starting line. I've been like, oh, I know like 80% of the starting line in hindsight.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, is you get the same, you get the same, the competitive get people essentially a lot
yep,
of times will travel around and go to like, everything in driving distance. So
yeah, exactly.
especially in the middle of the country where there's just not much, little
Yeah,
less.
yeah.
Where do you
There
live
was
up?
more back then, but
Yeah.
it's pretty thin now.
Where do you live now?
I live in eastern Iowa,
Okay.
kind of north of Iowa City.
Did
So,
you live near the largest truck stop in the world?
yeah, I'm about 30 minutes from there.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Nice.
I-80 truck stop.
Yeah, yeah. We stop there every time I drive through.
Nice.
All right. So let's talk about your 100-mile race, 16:14. I mentioned it once
Yep.
already, right? So was your fueling strategy for that? 'Cause I think a lot of people have issues with fueling. I was just kind of curious to know
I
what.
would say I kind of had it dialed in for that race, and I haven't varied from it very much since. I'm fortunate to have kind of a decent stomach, I guess, and um, I basically I'd switch back and forth between brands, but right now I'm on Honey Stinger. I'll take a gel every 30 minutes. I have an alarm set on my watch, um, and I'm pretty consistent about that, even late in the race when there's very little desire to put that in my mouth. I just have learned to make myself do it. Um, and that's what I did for that 100 mile. And with some other food and um, liquid calories too. But I can't drink a lot. So I found that kind of gives me whatever calories I can get from a drink is kind of a bonus, but I can keep around that 250, 300 calories an hour just off those gels. And then sip on, I usually do Tailwind. Um, I'll just sip on Tailwind and try to get maybe 12 ounces down an hour.
Gotcha. Good stuff.
And
Yeah,
that's worked pretty well the last few years.
I'm a huge proponent of liquid calories just to kind of make easier for your body to absorb and digest as
Yeah.
opposed to like throwing a big
Yeah.
lump of food in there that's sucking blood away from your muscles into your stomach. So
Yeah. Yep.
so what I recommend in Mud Run Guide's Ultra OCR Bible, my endurance obstacle course racing book there. So
Yeah.
um
And that doesn't work for a lot of people, or, some people can't stomach the gels, but to me, it's just a training strategy. You just figure out how to make it work, and kind of like
yeah.
how bad do you want to do well?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it just makes people feel weird when their stomach is used to like chunks of food in there and then it's mostly liquid
Yeah.
and like gels. Uh, I think you can make your body adjust if you force it. I think
Yeah. Yep.
people aren't willing to go to that place where it's like, well, this is not what I'm used to. So I think they default
Yeah.
to solid food. Just my 2 cents.
Yep.
All right,
And for a longer event like World's Toughest Mudder or even that 100 mile, I would try to get some kind of solid food every 2 to 3 hours. Like at World's Toughest, I'd eat an Uncrustable every other lap or every third lap if I could
gotcha.
stomach it.
Yeah, I didn't start eating solid food until like I was probably like 16 or 18.
Yeah.
I go all liquid. So, but
Nice.
all right, So, how did you end up? Because I haven't seen you in the Tough Mudder scene before, and you showed up at Tough of Chicago, and we're running, and you and Vincent at some point passed me, and I was like, these guys look very fast and very comfortable, and I was like, this could be a problem, and yeah, the
Yeah.
two of you guys ended up you both beat me, and both got 60 miles. Why did you decide to try Toughest?
I actually had wanted to run it last year, and obviously that didn't happen with COVID. Um, so I actually had World's Toughest kind of circled last year too. I wanted to do a 12-hour ahead of that, obviously, just to see the obstacles, see how my body handle it. I had never done any. Obviously, I'd done a few hundred miles where I'd gone over 16 or 20 hours. I'd never done more than like 6 or 7. I've done several ultras for Spartan, but those are 31, 32 miles. But it intrigued me. I do like the loop style just because it's as far as you have your pit, your fuel, it's consistent. You can kind of get into a groove, so that appealed to me. And I knew typically the terrain wasn't super crazy in terms of vertical gain or terrain. And I've I've ran several Spartans, the courses with the choppy terrain and super soft terrain, or we're running through creeks for 6 hours. I'm I'm susceptible to cramping when it's super soft like that. So it kind of appealed to me as potentially something that I'd be able to hopefully hold a decent pace for the whole time and maybe not cramp up. Um, so that's the Chicago venue. Obviously, it's only 2.5 hours from my place, so that was appealing. I didn't have to get on a plane or drive forever. Um, in the terrain, I knew it was pancake flat over there, so that was why it was so appealing to me, I guess.
Gotcha. And then you decided to come out. Obviously, you won the Toughest Chicago event. Decided to come out for World's Toughest Mudder, which this year took place in Laughlin, Nevada. For those who are not familiar, it's about hour and a half south of Las Vegas. So the old venue is about 45 minutes east of Las Vegas. So you actually drove through part of the town on your way down to Laughlin, Nevada. So it was all the way by the Arizona border, down to the kind of the bottom point of Nevada there. Now, what were some of your expectations coming into World's Toughest, and then kind of how did it, just kind of the experience in general, your expectations versus reality, and then we'll talk about your performance a little bit after.
My expectations, I guess my goal was to hit 100 miles just because I thought I could physically do it, and I knew that would put me in a decent shot of getting on a podium or top 5 at least. In terms of what I thought I could do, I honestly didn't know. Obviously, the toughest Chicago gave me some confidence that I could at least, hitting 60 miles in 12 hours. I felt fairly comfortable that I could do 100. But again, not knowing the terrain, which the terrain ended up being a little bit worse than I thought it would be. Not knowing the terrain, not knowing how tough the obstacles would be. Toughest Chicago was fairly easy. I didn't fail very much there. And then not knowing what the penalties would be, because I know Chicago's penalties were, from what I have heard, not the most difficult penalties. So I was a little bit worried about, I know I had heard some of the toughest were going to be a half-mile penalty, so I was afraid of getting, half mile to a mile of extra running per loop could be disastrous in terms of trying to hit 100. So I was a little bit hesitant to push too hard, especially the first maybe 6 to 8 hours. But then once we got into it, and I could tell that none of the obstacles were super tough. There's some that were more time consuming and kind of took more energy out of you, but they weren't. I wasn't really concerned about failing them or losing a lot of time if I did. So then it just became more, how long can I sustain this and not blow up, basically.
Gotcha. What about the community, right? So like people in Tough Mudder always talk about the community and like the other people on course. Just kind of from maybe a non-Tough Mudder perspective coming in. Any thoughts on what that was like?
I thought it was amazing. Yeah. The Chicago Toughest was great. Definitely a lot of camaraderie out there. World's Toughest was like another level. Everybody on course, obviously there's the incentive to work together, and that that took place a lot. But just the encouragement from people on course, the atmosphere, especially you get back to um, the pit area and the DJ and all that. Just a great atmosphere. Lots of people positive the whole time. Um, Encourage you to push yourself. Just yeah, it's something I mean I've experienced a lot of races, but it's definitely more individual based, I guess. So it was pretty cool to see how everybody could just buckle down and work together to get through stuff, whether they're on mile 40 or mile 90. It didn't really matter. Everybody was just pushing each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had the Everest Angels on the podcast before. They were out there,
Yeah.
obviously. But then there was also Jay Mazza and some of his friends. Like, I don't know all their names. I apologize, but they were at Mutterhorn, and normally Mutterhorn, there's like a wooden board about halfway up. The first like
Yep.
8 feet is like a smooth surface, so you basically step on the wooden board and you climb up. And they removed that, and they hung some ropes down. But so Jay and his crew were there, essentially boosting people up for 24 hours, just like
Yeah, that was unreal.
bruising the hell out of their shoulders and
Yeah.
eyes. And then there was another one. So skid marks are angled wall, essentially just angled back towards you. And again, normally there's like footholds on the way up, but they boarded up a bunch of them. And there was a guy, his nickname is Peaches, was there again by himself. So no cover, he's just by himself at this obstacle, just boosting people
Yeah.
up, which was
Yeah, that was
insane.
unbelievable.
Yeah. And there's a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of the obstacles have penalties, but not all the obstacles have penalties. So some of them are mandatory completion, and what like skid marks is
Yeah.
mandatory completion. So if you got there and couldn't get over that wall, like you're kind of screwed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Same with it's called Dublin Wall. So essentially, it's Berlin Wall essentially just an 8-foot wall with an overhang, and there was no one there boosting people up, but it was fairly early in the course, so there's usually someone. You usually run into
Yeah.
someone there if you had
Yeah.
trouble. Yeah. Yeah. Did you, and then you stuck around for the brunch? Yeah.
I did. Yeah. Yeah. That was again unexpected in terms of great atmosphere and a lot of uh I guess even just through the awards and stuff, the types of awards they gave out, just really cool how they recognize people and volunteers. Just a wide range of. It wasn't just the top podium; it was the whole community. They recognized, outstanding performances on all sorts of parts of the parts of the race. Pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoy that because it's like you said, it's not just the podium people. It's the podium people, but there's also these other, talking about the community and volunteering, and there's all these community awards and stuff like that. So it's really like a Tough Mudder Awards banquet, even though it's called World's Toughest
Yeah.
Champions Brunch. It's really like Tough Mudder's Awards banquet. It's kind of a nice end of year, although it's not actually the end of the year, but it's mostly the end of the year awards lunch. And if anyone's going to World's Toughest, my one recommendation, that it took me several years to do this, but I definitely stick around for the Monday brunch. I would always. I started going in
Yeah.
2017, and since then I've gone every year because I was like, well, I can't miss that because you finish the race and you're exhausted and you're tired and like I know all I want to do is get out of my wet, muddy clothes, right? So you're like, you might be a little less social, but I go home and I don't know about you, but I sleep awful Sunday night. My body is just screaming at me all night. And then Monday, I'm like, it's good to see everyone, and everyone's you're in a better mood. You're in dry clothes. You get to eat. So, yeah, highly recommend brunch.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't completely planning on going, but kind of decided after the race that I thought it'd be worthwhile, and I was definitely happy we made it to it.
Yeah. You were saying yeah when I was talking about Sunday night. Did you have trouble sleeping Sunday night?
Yeah, yeah. Um, we actually went to Vegas. One of my pit crew people, my sister-in-law, had a flight out the next morning, so we drove to Vegas, and I slept the whole way there. And then we got to the hotel, and I was just till probably, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning. Just all the, yeah, just basically from all the caffeine intake through the race, and just your body being pumped up and ready to go to war. I couldn't shut down. I
Yeah.
think I probably got 5 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I'm about the same. And mine was broken into like 30-minute to hour increments where I'd
Yeah,
sleep and then wake up and be in pain and then fall back asleep
yeah,
and repeat all night. So not super pleasant. For those who were at
yeah,
2019's World's Toughest or listened to our podcast after 2019's World Toughest, one of our complaints was that it was too like gamified, right? There's all these rubber ducks and there was these golden carabiners and you had to do all this kind of nonsense to get things to earn those things, and then you could use those to cover more mileage. So what was really cool about this one, for those who have been some of the previous years, is so if you had a contender or an elite contender bib, those games were not an option. But if you had an open wave bib, um, those games were an option. So I thought the Tough Mudder headquarters did like a really good job of just splitting that right down the middle. Whereas, if you want to be competitive, you want to compete for prize money, you can race in the contender category or the elite contender category, right? And shoot for those mileage markers without the games and without some of the the gamification. But if you wanted to have a little more fun and maybe less care about placement, you could do the open wave category, which they had the golden carabiners on route. They had a bunch of rubber ducks in the Block Ness Monster like last time that you could bring in and redeem for prizes. They had concrete TM in the pit area, and people were like chipping out carabiners from the concrete. They were taking like shots of hot sauce and to earn like bypass bands and stuff like that. Did you see any of that on course?
I
Yep.
did. Yeah, yeah. It was pretty cool. I had heard about the 2019, so I'm not against any of that stuff, but yeah, when you're competing, it does kind of go away from the competition, I guess. But I thought it was cool how they still implemented it for the open wave. Yeah, the hot shots, I saw lots of people a mile or so out from the pits, kind of ejecting the hot sauce.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah,
I heard that was really upsetting people's stomach. Like they're like,
yeah,
yeah, it didn't burn too bad going down. It was like, but it did not sit right. So
yeah,
the other cool thing was, so it was outside of Laughlin. So unlike in the Vegas venue, you're essentially in the middle of the desert and you really can't see anything. It's just kind of blackness in all direction. With the Laughlin venue, you could see the city. You could see Laughlin, and it was all lit up at night. So you got to see like the casinos in the background and the hotels and stuff like
yeah.
that, which is really cool. Did you hear the concert going on the first mile of the course?
I did. Yeah, yeah. That was pretty cool too.
So, Sean Corvell, every Tough Mudder, he's like, when was the last time you did something for the first time? And there's a song by Darius Rucker that uses the same lyrics that we're going to say. The Tough Mudder community claims that Darius Rucker stole that from Sean Corvell and the Tough Mudder community, which, yes, I agree with that. But what was crazy was Darius Rucker was in Laughlin the night of the race playing a concert, and I don't know what mile I'm on, 55 or something, and I come around that first corner, starting my next lap, and they're playing that song, and I
Yeah,
could hear it live on the course, which was just, I mean, the probability of all those events lining up is just completely crazy to me, because it's
yeah,
not like he played it multiple times, right? That's the only time he's going to play it during the night, and I happened to be on the 1 mile of section of course where you could hear those lyrics, which is really cool to hear.
yeah. It was pretty surreal.
What did you think of Mark Bottress's performance?
Um, I thought going into the race when I saw that he was going to be racing there, that he was going to go out hot and more than likely implode. Nothing
Mm-hmm.
against him, just it's a 24-hour race. I I know he likes to race like that, but I had no idea that he was going to be able to hold it that long. Um, and I think I got lapped by him twice in the first maybe 14 hours, and he was just motoring. It was unreal. Yeah, it didn't surprise me that he won, but it definitely surprised me that he hit 115 miles. Just unreal. And then to go back and look at his pit times, and I mean, obviously it worked for him, but I think he was averaging like 5 to 10 minutes hit. Some of them were even longer.
That's wild.
Um, and my wife was on my pit, and she said she saw him in pit, and he was just hammering food. He'd just sit there and pound down, a bowl of ramen or whatever. Then
Those are
back out.
long pit times for an elite. Those
Yeah,
are very long. Like you're wasting a lot
yeah.
of time. And what's even crazier, so I heard that for the first like 5 or 6 laps, he didn't know what the obstacle bypass bracelets were. So he didn't pick up
Oh,
the first
really?
5 or 6 bracelets, which allows you to
Oh,
skip one
man.
obstacle. And on that course, you could skip. A lot of people were using it on Devil's Beard, or with a
Yep,
variation of Devil's Beard, which is an
yep,
uphill crawl underneath the tight cargo net and through a little bit of water. Because that one took almost 2 minutes probably and it was
yep,
kind of annoying. Where did you
yeah.
end up using your bypass bands on?
So when I did Chicago, I was afraid I was gonna cramp, so I hoarded mine the first, oh, 5 or 6 loops that we got them, and then used two at a time the last several laps. And that worked pretty well for me. So I kind of wanted to do that this time too if I could. Um, so I saved up. I think I had 10 before I started using them. And I was kind of, the first 50 miles or so, just seeing what obstacles were taking the most time. Um, and the first one I used was on the Devil's Beard one, and just because it was a drainer. Um, like I could almost feel my quads cramping up when I try to get through the nuts. But then I checked my time, and it was taking like 2 minutes. And if you use the bypass, you still had to walk up the hill, which I figured would take like 30 seconds. So you're only really gaining like a minute 30.
Right.
But then on what's the log hurdle one? I can't remember what they called that. Lumberjack.
Lumberjack, yeah.
It was fairly simple. It was just a sandbag and then the 4 hurdles. But I think it took like 3.5 to 4 minutes or so to get through it. And then Mutterhorn, I was guessing, took about 3. So to me, those were the two most time consuming ones. So I think the last 6 laps, I skipped both of those every time
Mm.
just to try to gain, I don't know what that would have been, about 7 minutes or so. Um, so I still did the Devil's Beard, but uh, I felt confident that that extra minute or so was worth the struggle, whether or not it worked or not. I mean, I never completely cramped up, so I felt good about that. But yeah, I think it worked out well.
Nice. Yeah, I was using on Devil's Beard a lot and the Motorhorn again, just because their
Yep,
time sucks there. And
yep,
similar strategy. I think I started using them around mile 55 or so, and then I would use like one a lap, and then those last couple laps I used 2 a lap. So
yeah,
just trying to save time when I'm exhausted, and
yep,
things are, some things take you a minute fresh, but then as you fatigue, it may take 2 minutes, right? So
yeah,
I think they end
yeah.
up increasing in value almost as the race goes on.
I did. I was planning on potentially saving some more towards the end. I was just kind of playing or watching the clock. I wanted to make sure I could get that last lap in, come in under 24 hours. So I was prepared to throw 3 or 4 down, that last lap if I had to, just to get back on course and try to get the last 5 miles in. But
Gotcha.
luckily, I think I came in like, I owe 11:30 or something, so I was had a half hour extra time, so still was able to use 2 on the last lap.
Gotcha. Now, people were like, oh, well, if, back to Mark Botras, right? So his
Yep,
performance was insane, right? So he would
yep,
pass me, and I would be like, what? I've never seen, I've done 7 World's Toughest. I've done, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 11 Toughest Mudders. I've never seen someone pass me that fast. It
yeah,
was insane.
yeah,
And people were like, well, if Ryan Atkins was here, you still think Mark would have won? And the answer is yes, 100%. And here's
yeah,
why. Because, like you were saying, he was going so fast. Everyone, Trevor, you, me, I was like, you can't sustain that. He's gonna blow up.
Yeah.
And I think if Ryan Atkins was there, I think he would have let Mark go because he would have been like, he's going too fast. And just like Trevor, by the time he realized how far ahead he was and how much time he had left, you can't catch him in that amount of time left. Now, let's fast forward a year. Hypothetically, Ryan Atkins and Mark Botras both show up to World Toughest Mudder 2022. I think then it's a different story because now Ryan knows Mark's capability and Mark knows Ryan's capability, and then that would be a really good battle.
Yeah, so, I agree.
Yeah.
Although the same token, it wouldn't surprise me if Mark we find some things like his pit, especially, and
the bypass bracelets
and be an impossibility.
Oh, it would be a really good race. I think Mark could beat Ryan. I think Ryan could also beat Mark. Yeah, I think it's Ryan's undefeated in essentially ultra OCR, so 8 hour plus. He's never lost since 2013, which is insane. So you have to obviously give credit there, but I mean Mark's performance was next level, and I've had Ryan pass me in 8 hour toughest, and I've run with him for a mile, and been not winded, right? Like, but I've been like, he just moves very efficiently and doesn't waste a lot of time transitioning in and out of obstacles, and then he blazes through the pit. And I moved through the pit pretty quick, but Ryan was also very quick, and I stuck with him for a mile, and I was feeling fine, and then again he just was more efficient and kept moving. So versus Mark, like, I mean, he was moving like laughably fast. I was like, you can't run like that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
pretty unreal.
Very impressive. Also want to give a quick shout out to Trevor Psychos. So this was his 7th year of World Toughest Mudder, his 7th year on the podium, his 4th 100-mile bib/jacket. So
another unreal performance for sure.
So Trevor coming into this was like, oh, I don't know, I haven't been training much, and I was like, yeah, right, Trevor, but in 2018 you showed up after doing some like 200-mile race across Scotland, like 2 weeks prior. So I was like, I bet you're actually well rested, and you'll have just as good of a performance, even though you haven't been training as much. So, and I was also right on that one. So I'm gonna pat myself on the back, but I will pat Trevor on the back even more, because like they gave out awards at the brunch for people who've done all 10 World's Toughest, which is impressive, absolutely. But I'd say there's a different level of commitment when you're someone like Trevor, who's coming back year after year, defending a podium position, and then on top of that is like, I mean, he's redlining, right? Like, he's not holding anything back at the end of that race. It requires you to go pretty deep into the pain cave, and he's been doing it for 7 years in a row. So I just want to also give him a shout out, because that's just the consistency of his performances over the last 7 years is very impressive. I think to me it's more impressive than his actual individual race results, which he hit 110 this year. So
unreal.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on 2022? So the new venue is Pensacola, Florida.
I'm excited that it's somewhere decent, hopefully decent weather. From what I can tell, I think the footing will potentially be decent and not a ton of elevation gain. So, I was on the fence whether or not I'd do another one this next year. Just the day after. So I was like, I don't know that I can get up for this again. Part of the reason, I was running and I knew that I was going to be close to 100, and I told myself, if I hit 100, I can not come back and do this again and be happy. Like I've done the 100.
Yep.
So then on Sunday I was kind of feeling the same way, and then Monday when they announced that, then wheels started turning. Like, maybe it'll be sandy, but not as soft sand as it was here. The weather's not that bad. So Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm signed up already.
Oh,
Ready to
are you
go.
really?
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Good stuff. Yeah, I was gonna ask if you were coming back. Because yeah, like you said, so personal story. So I had two conversations that I'm gonna condense into kind of one quick story. So one of my friends was like, what are you missing? So I hit that 90 miles for the third time, and he's like, well, what are you missing that's preventing you from hitting 100? And for this year specifically, I peaked my mileage a couple weeks beforehand, and then I got sick, so I stopped
yeah,
running for a week. And when I got back into running, those last kind of like 2 weeks leading up to World's Toughest, my heart rate was just like unusually high. I'm not sure if I was just overtrained or like the sickness was kind of still lingering in my body. But
yeah.
I
That's
did
tough.
not feel good at World's Toughest. Normally at a 12-hour race, there comes a point where like for several laps, I'm like really in a groove and just kind of cruising.
Yeah,
And I just felt like it was a complete grind for 24
yeah,
hours. It's
yeah.
very,
That's tough.
you know, so I'm actually really happy with my performance, all things considered. But anyway, so I was talking to him. He's like, what do you need to change? And I was like, I think I just need to race less, to be honest with you, right? Like,
Yeah,
'cause my race schedule is very aggressive and I do a lot of endurance. And by the end of the season, I'm pretty burnt out.
yeah,
So they were like, so he's like, why don't you race less? Like, isn't the 100-mile bib worth more than these other races? And individually, yes, it is. But I have other goals that I'm kind of stacking on top of each other. And like
yeah,
most athletes, I'm a little greedy, right? So I'm trying to hit all these goals simultaneously. So the 100-mile
yeah,
bib is one of my goals, absolutely. But it's just one of my goals. It's not the only goal. So
yeah,
it's kind of a abbreviated answer and a kind of condensing a couple of different conversations. But
yeah. No, that makes sense.
yeah. So yeah, was World's Toughest important? Yeah, it's my most important race of the year. Is it more important than all my other races combined? No, it's not.
Yeah, yeah,
So, but and kind of like you, I was thinking again, thinking through as I was getting ready, Friday night, Saturday morning, I was like, maybe if I get 100, uh, I'll just stop running individually and switch over to relay.
yeah,
And on Monday, I was like, well, didn't hit 100. Guess I need to come back at least, another year.
yeah,
So kind of like it as like almost, obviously I'd like to get it, but I kind of like that unreachable goal right now where it's continuing to pull me back. So
yeah.
yeah, I got a couple more individual world toughest in me, definitely. And
Oh
I
yeah,
think when you see me switch over to relay, that's your signal that I'm on my way out of world's
yeah,
toughest, right? So I'll
yeah.
probably do relay for a couple of years before I, hang it up.
Well, if it's anything like the ultra scene, I mean, there's super competitive studs in their mid to late 40s. You
Yeah.
know, it's a different game. Uh, and I was surprised when I came into the ultra running scene. Like the Tunnel Hill race I did in 16 hours. Just you start the race, you would not expect the people that are in 50th place or whatever to even come close to the front, and they just bring it at the end.
Mm.
A 9-minute mile pace that feels way too slow, they just hold it.
Yeah.
So I whether or not OCR has weeds any more of those out, maybe, but yeah, I think the longer distance, even in OCRs, there's some longevity for
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely.
At least I hope so. I just turned 40 a few months ago, so
Have you noticed, coming from a short distance background, have you noticed as you've aged, substantial change in training or performance, stuff like that?
um, the faster stuff is definitely harder to hit, um, mentally and physically, and just training in general. I've noticed it takes a lot longer for me to get warmed up, um, and I go out for an easy run. 10 years ago, I'd be hitting 7 minutes, 6:30 right off the bat. It might take me 2 miles. I might be running 8:30 pace for 2 miles before I get, loosened up and comfortable. Um, but again, that it's kind of like a governor. It keeps you from revving too high on the easy days. So there's give and take to it. Um, But I think the base you build up over time gives you a huge advantage that, someone in their 20s doesn't necessarily have, especially for the longer ultra racing. And I've just kind of noticed that and been taking advantage of that the last few years. So
Absolutely.
hopefully that continues.
So before World's Toughest, I got interviewed on Obstacle Racing Media. I think it was their Instagram or stories or something. And they asked me basically how much the winner was going to get. And I said they were going to get 110. And at the time, people were like, no, yeah. People were like, that's too high. And I was like, all right. One, I was right. And two, I said 100 miles won't guarantee you a spot on the podium.
Yeah.
And I was right on that too, because you came in 6th with 100 miles.
Yeah.
So, and people were like, I was talking to my dad after, and he's like, well, what makes you come to those conclusions? And it was, there's 200 feet less elevation than previous Vegas venues, right? So there's less elevation gain, which will add up when you times it by 20. Oh, yeah. And then the bigger one to me was the temperature, I think dropped to a low of 64. And if you're running, you generate enough body heat where you don't need to put on a full wetsuit. Yeah. And we were like, oh, well, that's not going to make a much difference. Well, it does, because a wetsuit, when it's wet, will weigh like 10 pounds. I mean, that thing's heavy. And then so you add the weight, and then you add some of the restrictive movement it adds. And, you add that's more weight going across obstacles, more weight, running. And so that was my logic. I was like, the guys who are fast, it's going to be a huge advantage not having to put on that wetsuit, a full wetsuit. Did you end up wearing any neoprene?
I didn't. No, I brought the sleeves and shorts version and the long sleeve bodysuit just in case. But yeah, looking at the weather the week before, it actually lined up pretty close to what Chicago was. I knew the water was probably going to be colder than it was in Chicago.
Yeah, it was.
Chicago, I just wore the race bib and spandex shorts, but Vegas or Laughlin weather was pretty decent. Luckily, the wind died down. I was a little nervous in that, when the sun was up, it was pretty breezy, but the wind seemed to die down enough at night that I never really got cold or shivery at all. So that was definitely nice.
Yeah. I ended up putting a neoprene top on, so just a long sleeve shirt. I'm not sure how far into the race. Sometime in the middle of the night. It was like 2 or 3 a.m. and wore that until the sun came out, and then took it off. Which I was surprised with, because I was like, I feel like I should be warmer than this, but whatever. That's what I ended up doing. And
I guess I did put one of those Patagonia Houdinis, the vest. I threw that on at like 2 a.m. Just there was a stretch where you were wet for a while and then didn't seem to get dried off, and I got a little bit cold, but not bad.
Yeah.
But that vest was, I was actually unzipping it because I was hot a couple hours later.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with that product. What is it exactly?
It's one of those super small windproof jackets that just balls up, smaller than
okay. Okay.
Yeah. And I've used that out in Tahoe several times. So it completely blocks the wind, and then when you do get wet, it dries off within a couple minutes.
Oh, nice.
So it doesn't hold in a ton of heat, but it keeps it from, the wind from blowing the heat off your body.
Yeah. And the you mentioned it already, but the water was actually really cold. Like, to me, the water in Arctic Enema was only a couple degrees colder than the normal water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was very surprising. I was like, why is Arctic Enema like the same temperature as the other ones? So, that was a little fun. And it was an interesting course again. So the first half was almost completely dry. So you ran 2 miles, and then you finally hit cage crawl, which is your first water obstacle. And then the back half of the course had a lot of water on it. So you hit, Arctic Enema, and if you fell off Funky Monkey, that you got wet. If you fell off or regardless, even if you hit the Mini King of Swingers, I call it. I think it's called Hang Time or something.
Yep.
You get wet on that one. Did you end up taking the electric route? So for those who weren't there, you had a choice of Arctic Enema, so the ice bath, and then Mini King of Swingers, or you could follow the electric route, which was low crawl, electric eel, with smoke in it. Then they had electric, essentially called laser beams, so electric ropes, and then they had a combination of pitfall, so essentially holes in the ground with electric shock therapy above it. Did you end up taking the electric route?
I did not do a single electric obstacle.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So,
and part of that in Chicago, I never got shocked once. I was able to navigate around them, and I was still a little bit hesitant. I mean, I'm not necessarily afraid of getting shocked, but again, I have a history of cramping. I
okay.
was nervous that I get hit with a shock and like my calf or my hamstring or something would cramp up. So I went the Arctic Enema swingers route.
Really? Even
Every
after
half
they
mile.
were at around, I don't know, 2 a.m. or something, you started going reverse Arctic enema.
They did that, so I banded out on that when they did that because I
Okay.
looked in and I saw them trying to crawl out of the ropes, and I was like, "There's no way." So I used the band there, and then by the time I came back, they had switched directions again.
Oh,
I think
really?
it was,
Okay.
yeah, I think it was just destroying people.
I didn't know they switched
Yeah,
directions again.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
good.
the top of Arctic Enema was like 6 feet, so even if someone was up there holding their hand down, you, there was not. You would have had to climb the rope like 4 feet to get to their hand.
Jeez.
So yeah, it was basically impossible.
So
From what I could tell, I guess.
so we at Infinite Hero Honor Challenge, one of the challenges we had them do a couple times was do Arctic Enema in reverse. Of course, there's no ropes hanging down, but it's a team
Yeah.
building event. So I knew how difficult it is. And when they're like, do reverse Arctic Enema, I was like, the electric route it is. Thank you for making that easy for me.
Yeah.
So the electric route, again, that low crawl through essentially Crybaby. So it's like a menthol gas. They say it's tear gas sometimes, but it's not, right? It's like a menthol gas. It smells nice in there, to be honest with you. I would go through that and then laser beams and then electric eel. I'm sorry, electric shock therapy. So we're in the low crawl and people are like being really careful about electric eel, and I'm just barreling through the wires. So I'm going to share a secret with you guys. Here's why. If there's no medic at the obstacle, it's not on.
Oh, nice.
So they're not going to electrocute people without a medic.
Gotcha.
Second, there was at one point there was so much smoke in there that you couldn't see anything. And I was like, well, they're not going to electrocute someone without a medic and in an area where they physically can't see what's going on.
Yeah.
So I was like, this thing's off. I guarantee it. And I was right. And I just barreled through it. To be fair, I did get hit once on laser beams because the medic was wearing a jacket, and I didn't realize he was a medic. But yeah, so that's a tip for you guys. Hopefully, Tough Mudder isn't listening to this, and they don't change that to outsmart people. But it's a pro tip for you. You can put it in your pocket for later. All right, we're gonna start wrapping things up. Before we get going, tell us one thing people would be surprised to know about you.
I have an acreage here in Iowa that my wife and I live on, and we have fainting goats here.
Faint, like the ones that get excited and just tip over?
Well, yeah. Yep.
That's amazing.
They get scared and they just fall over.
Is that a I know very little about goats. Is that like a specific breed, or is that like
it's a specific breed? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're called myotonic. They don't faint. Their legs get stiff, and then they just fall over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do we use them for? Are you eating them? What do we?
No, they're basically pets.
Okay.
They eat the grass in the field, and that's pretty much it. My kids like them.
Okay. Do your kids make them excited and then they tip over?
Okay, yeah, occasionally. We try not to do it too often, but yeah.
Nice. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. What do you got coming up for 2022? Or the end of 2021? Do 2021 and 2022.
2021, I'm hitting the Florida trifecta. Doing the Beast on Saturday, Super and Sprint on Sunday, and I signed up for that ahead of time, knowing that I was going to be coming down from this World's Toughest and needed something to get my ass out of bed here for the next month. So I'm racing elite. I have no expectations. I'd like to do well, but I'm not in the speediest shape right now. So, but it's a good reason to get out of town. So that's gonna finish up my 2021. 2022, I don't have anything on paper really yet. Again, I've signed up for World's Toughest already. I haven't seen where the Spartan Ultra Championships are going to be, but judging off the last several years, it's always at altitude and it's always tons of elevation gains.
Yeah, that's why I haven't been showing up. Yep.
So even Telluride this year is not that far, I think 12 hours from here, but the gain and the altitude just does not, I can't be competitive at the top level. Yeah, World's Toughest is going to be my A race.
Nice.
I'll probably do the toughest Indiana, and I've actually been at that Saraland course a few times.
That's a nice venue.
Yeah.
It's like a family park. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So that should be fun. Yeah, it should be a flat and fast course. Yeah. We did Infinite Hero beta test there, and then I ran it on Sunday, and it was just flat.
Yeah. So those are my top races. Otherwise, I'll probably hit some other Spartans here, early summer, late summer. But well, I guess now that I'm 40 here in Iowa, I'm trying to knock down some of the road race records if I get a chance.
Nice.
Anywhere from 5 miles to marathon, and then Drake Relays. I don't know if you're familiar with Drake Relays at all.
Yeah.
The track race. They have a Masters 800. So I'm gonna try to go throw down in there and see what I can do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Quite a spectrum. 24 hours to 800 meters.
Yeah.
It's quite a spread there.
Some sharpening before that, I'm sure, but fun. Yeah.
Awesome.
Blood going again.
Well, what was I going to say? Oh, for our listeners, make sure you head over to Mudgear. There's a bunch of articles up there. One is, do inflatables belong in OCR? I wrote that one. There's another one comparing combat and obstacle course racing. So I took a bunch of physiological stuff that happens in your body based off of research from Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman and compared it to some of the same physiological things that happen during obstacle course racing. So obviously on a different scale and obviously different importance levels there. But I just, listening to David Grossman's book on combat, I just kept hearing things and I was like, I've experienced the same thing in racing as well as combat. But I could relate. It was kind of weird because I could relate to it a lot more from racing because I have so many races under my belt. So that was kind of interesting. So I would check that article out. And then on top of that, my pit crew at World's Toughest Mudder was John Coley. He's one of essentially the content creator for Mudgear. So he just released an article about his first World's Toughest Mudder experience that's up on Mudgear. So you can check all those out. And then if anyone's looking for Christmas presents, we have Bleg mitts in stock, small, medium, and large in light, and then small and medium in extreme. About to place a reorder for larges. So large extremes should be back in time and in time for you to actually order and have them shipped in time for Christmas. So if anyone's looking for that. And then on top of that, got all my books available on the teamstrengthspeed.com website. So the, Ultra OCR Bible and Ultra OCR Man, my biography, and then plus Strength and Speed's Guide to Elite Obstacle Course Racing and all the other ones. You guys can go over there and dig through those when you have time. All right. I think that about wraps it up. Any final shout outs you want to give? Friends, family, sponsors, Ian?
I don't have anybody writing me checks, but I do have Honey Stinger gives me tons of product, and Vegas CBD, both great products. And yeah, my wife obviously screwed for me, paid for me. Yeah, and her sister-in-law, which is her first OCR race of any kind. So they pulled my ass through. And then extended family for watching our 4 kids for 5 days while we were in Vegas.
Nice. Yeah, so I used to drag my wife to World's Toughest Mudder every year, including the first year when she was 6 months pregnant. And then it's on her birthday weekend every single year. So she stopped coming when we had our second kid. So now it's just me and my dad typically, and then we bring a third pit crew member. But yeah, they schedule World's Toughest Mudder for my wife's birthday weekend every year. So she is a very understanding woman, and I appreciate her. And then if anyone's following me on social media and or was at the awards banquet, I ended up winning the Holy Grail mileage, which I was super excited about. So it's essentially the Tough Mudder point series. So the combination of your tougher, toughest, and world's toughest mileage all combined. So you have to do all three. Otherwise you can't win, which is very fortunate to me because I know Trevor, I think, skipped the tougher this year, and Mark Batra skipped the toughest this year, which I was super excited about. And then the guy that wasn't first, Miles Lacey, a quick shout out to him. He did a great job this year, but because I scored a pretty high mileage, I hit 90 at World's Toughest Mudder, I was able to overtake him on that last day there. So yeah,
congrats on that.
Yeah, it was a very nice surprise. It was like a kind of a background goal, and I was like, I don't think I'll get it this year, maybe next year. And we went to In-N-Out Burger after the race, and I started like looking at the results, and I was like, oh my goodness, I think I won. And then I was like, I was like, but I'm sure what if I'm missing someone, like Mark or Trevor? But again, they hadn't done one of the races, so I had it allowed me to hold on to that lead, which was surprising because normally you have to do a lot of events to score mileage. But I happened to hit some really good mileage at the 3 endurance events and then the 1 tougher event. So the lowest number of events anyone's ever won the Holy Grail Championship with, which was very fortunate for me. So excited about that. And it's a nice ending to my 2021 season. Yeah. So I hope to see some of our listeners out at Battle of the Lions. They got 4 events planned for 2022, same 4 venues as last time. So Dallas, Little Rock, Kansas City, and Oklahoma City. So check those out. And then I keep saying Operation, it's not part of the title. Infinite Hero Honor Challenge has 3 events all planned for early in 2022. So head over to Tough Mudder and sign up for that, please, because I will be at all 3 running the event. It's kind of a team building thing. And it's not like a 10-hour suck fest. It's, themed and it'll be fun, but it'll also kind of get your legs moving and give you that a little bit of endurance, kind of a good training day for future races. So please head over and check that out. And you can, if you have a season pass, you can register for free or you can pay the registration, either one. And then there's a fundraising goal. So kind of like what I've done with a lot of my Ultra OCR charity events where I fundraise and then also do an endurance event. Similar thing, but it's like everyone can do it. And, there's multiple ability levels. So we have guys that were really fit and got girls that were really fit and then other ones that were less fit. But you move at it as a group pace and then, your attributes will help out in certain areas. So just because you're strong and fast doesn't mean you'll do well on everything. And just because you're slow doesn't mean you'll do poorly at everything, right? So some of it requires mental, some of it requires complex problem solving and stuff like that. And I've got some good stuff planned for 2022 for the event. So if you did one in 2021, come back in 2022 because it will be all different events with an all different storyline. All right. I'm done running my mouth. Ian, thanks again for joining me. Thanks for having me, man. Yeah, I'll catch up with you later in 2022.
Awesome. Sounds good to me.
All right. Catch you later.
All right. See ya.